In the dead of night, Emma crept into the old mansion where her sister Lily was murdered a year ago. The killer, Victor, a smug aristocrat, had walked free, his wealth silencing justice. Emma's heart burned with rage, her hands clutching a cursed locket she'd found in a witch's abandoned shop. Moonlight streamed through grimy windows, highlighting the faded grandeur. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows that twisted and writhed like tormented souls. She wanted to burst from her hiding place, to confront Victor, to make him feel the torment she'd endured for a year. Victor's head snapped up, his face draining of color. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the only sound the crackling fire and the dog's soft snores. His skin was peeling away, revealing charred flesh beneath. Victor's body was beyond saving. His flesh was completely charred, his bones white ash. Emma slumped to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. On it was a half-empty glass of water and a note. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. The neat script was undoubtedly Victor's. Had he somehow tricked her, used her own magic against her? She fumbled to take off her locket and flung it to the ground, where it hit the stone floor with a dull thud. Emma screamed, realizing her folly, understanding the terrible price she had paid. And so the tale of the Shadow Eater continued, a grim warning to those who dared to dabble in Forbidden's magic. Forever trapped within the walls of Victor's mansion, it was too late. Now the spirit was free, and it was her fault. Then she ran, not knowing where she was going, not caring. "Thank you," it read, "for ending my misery. You have freed me from this world. Victor Blackwood." Beneath the note was a silver locket, identical to the one Emma wore around her neck. She stared at it, her heart pounding. She remembered the legend, the stories of the witch's locket, how it could summon a spirit to punish the wicked. But the price, the legend also spoke of a price, a terrible price. She didn't know how long she sat there, but eventually, when the sky was filled with the colors of sunrise, she dragged herself away. She felt the heat of the fire on her hands, and she pulled away, more horrified by what she saw than the pain. His flesh was turning to ash, his bones glowing red-hot. She could see the life draining from his eyes, leaving behind only vacant sockets. Yet he still begged her to end his suffering. Finally, when his cries became too weak to continue, she stopped trying to pull him out. Then Victor scrambled back, knocking over his chair. "Emma," he stammered, his voice hoarse with fear. "What? How?" Emma took a step forward, her eyes fixed on Victor. "It doesn't matter how," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You're not getting away with this." Victor's eyes darted around the room, frantically searching for an escape. On the ground where the locket lay, a dark stain was spreading, inching closer to the edges like a living thing. It was a stain of shadow, a darkness that seemed to suck the light from the room. And as Emma watched in horror, it began to writhe, twisting and turning like a living creature. From the darkness, a pair of hollow eyes stared back at her, filled with an ancient, bottomless hunger. The shadow creature lurked, waiting. He glanced at the dog, who had stirred from its slumber and was now staring at Emma with wary eyes. Then he made a dash for the window, but it was too late. Emma was faster. She loomed over him, her face inches from his, her eyes burning with cold fury. "You can't run," she whispered, her voice like ice, but she had to be patient. She waited until the man by the window excused himself, leaving Victor alone in the chair. Then she made her move. And there in an armchair by the fire sat Victor, bathed in the warm light, a glass of brandy in his hand. Next to him lay a sleeping dog, its soft snores adding to the eerie quiet. Books rained down on him, and he screamed as one caught his eye, momentarily blinding him. Startled by his sudden movement, the dog let out a furious bark and lunged at Emma, who stumbled back. "Get away!" she hissed at the dog, and it hesitated, then retreated back to Victor, who was slowly regaining his sight. Seeing his chance, Victor scrambled away from the falling books and dashed toward the fireplace. Emma was close behind him, her feet pounding on the carpet. As Victor reached the hearth, he did something that made Emma freeze. He flung himself onto the fire, rolling around in the flames. "No," she screamed, horrified as his clothes caught fire and his skin turned a horrifying shade of red. But he kept screaming, "Kill me, until his voice was hoarse. Beside the window stood a man, his back to Emma, seemingly deep in conversation with Victor. Emma watched, hidden in the shadows, as the man gestured animatedly, his face animated in the firelight. Then he leaned closer to Victor, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Emma strained to listen, her heart pounding. But the men were speaking in hushed tones, their words lost to the crackling fire. With each step, the air grew colder, laden with the scent of decay and something else, something faintly metallic, like dried blood. She could hear the distant sound of a dog barking, along with the soft murmur of a man's voice. Victor, she moved like a phantom through the house, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet on the stairs. She paused, listening intently. The voices seemed to be coming from the library. Taking a deep breath, she turned toward the sound. Legend said it summoned a vengeful spirit to punish the guilty. Now, under the pale glow of the moon, she stood before the imposing iron gates. Each creak of the rusty chains felt like a death knell in the stillness. As she pushed open the gates, a low growl echoed from within, sending shivers down her spine. She hurried through the overgrown gardens, moonlight filtering through the dense canopy above, barely illuminating the path ahead. Reaching the back door, she slipped inside, her senses on high alert. The interior was a cavernous space choked with dust and shadows. The library was a majestic room, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lining the walls, their titles long faded. As the minutes ticked by, Emma's frustration grew. She stepped out of the darkness, her face pale in the firelight, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. He turned, desperation etched on his face, and stumbled back, knocking over a bookshelf. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she struggled to pull Victor from the flames. Outside, the sky was lightening, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. As she stumbled through the house, she noticed a small table by the window. She looked down at the locket in her hand, its surface cold against her skin. Was this Victor's doing? As the sun rose higher, casting its golden rays across the horizon, it revealed a new horror. Then, in a voice that was the embodiment of all that was evil and cruel, it spoke. "You have summoned me, child. Who will I punish next?" As the shadow creature advanced, its eyes burning with malevolent glee, she knew she had unleashed something she couldn't control, something that would bring nothing but darkness and despair.